Hey, I'm Tristan, one of the founders of Skyvue. I have some sample data sets here that represent a fictional nurse staffing company. It's a platform, it's a supply and demand two-sided marketplace, right? And it's kind of a microcosm of how a data warehouse might look for this type of company. It's a totally fictional company. The data sets are completely made up, but it should be somewhat indicative of a typical data warehouse, right? Skyvue is really good at helping you explore that part of your data where you're not really sure what you're gonna find. You're not really sure what you're looking for. The analysis isn't automated yet. You can't just pull up a Looker dashboard or a Tableau dashboard and just kind of go to town on it. You're really just trying to find some early answers and insights that can spearhead larger data projects. And Skyvue can help you with that part of the data journey too. But today we're just going to really look at that early exploratory phase. So let's dive in. So the first question that we want to look at is the top 3 zip codes for supply and demand. So in this case, supply would be how many nurses are available for shifts, and demand would be how many medical facilities or providers are requesting shifts or requesting nurses for shifts. So coming to the Skyvue app home, you see there are 2 main areas: the data sets and dashboards. We don't have any dashboards yet. We'll get to that. And these are just CSV uploads, but they're intended to kind of model what a warehouse would look like. And there are other ways to get data in besides CSV, but just for purposes of demonstration, we're going to go with this for now. So let's start with the demand side. So we have this org schedules data set. I'm just going to go ahead and favorite that and put it at the top, and we're going to open it up. Cool. So we have this org schedules data set. I'll move this over to the side over here. A few things you'll notice. Looks like we've got an org schedule ID. So this is going to be like the primary key for this table. The org ID, so the ID of the organization requesting the schedule. We have created date, role ID, things of that nature, right? Some other supplementary data. And we'll go ahead and rename this to supplier demand analysis. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to go to this join section. And actually, first thing I want to do is I want to tighten this view up a little bit. It looks a little large. We've got a few rows we want to bring in. So we'll make these column headers a little higher too. And we'll go into these joins, and we're going to join on orgs. Do a left join, and we'll select organizations from this dropdown. Then we can select the view that we want to join on. And this is what you see here at the bottom, these different tabs. These are basically different views on your data. They're a fresh set of configs and definitions of how you want to query that data. It looks like we only have one on that one right now, and it's untitled. We'll just go ahead and select it. And then here we define where we want to join. So this is the join on something equals something, right? So here we'll join where org ID. And then you see that we get the options for the joining data set. And it's recommending we join an org ID because they seem like fairly similar titles. And so that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to bring in the zip code because we want to analyze demand by zip code. So this would be, we can just give this an alias. We don't have to do this, but we're going to do it just for fun. And then we are going to go ahead and save it. Okay, so yeah, we got our zip code in here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a pivot table. And we're going to pivot on the org zip as well as the shift. So this would be grouping by these 2 distinct columns wherever there's a combination of the shift and, for that specific zip code. Because we actually want to, bifurcate this between morning, afternoon, and evening shifts. And then we're going to just bring in the count of the org schedule IDs. So this is just going to basically give us like the number of shifts for that shift and that zip code. And then we'll just say, and then we're going to just sort by this just so we can get a cleaner view. So we can see by each zip code what the number of shifts is available. So then we're going to go over to so now we're going to go over to the supply side. How many nurses are actually available? And so we're going to go into this personnel schedules. We'll go ahead and favorite it again and open it up. Okay, so now we have the personnel schedules table, which is going to represent the supply side, how many nurses are actually available for each shift, that the medical facility is looking to staff. So we're going to do a somewhat similar approach. We're going to add a join on this personnel ID, and we'll just bring in some info about that specific personnel item. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to join on uh, personnel ID. We again get a recommendation. We're going to join on that personal ID, and then we're going to bring in just for fun. We can bring in the role ID. We can bring in zip code, which is the primary thing we want, and then years of experience just for fun. So we're going to save that. So we're going to do a somewhat similar thing that we did in the other data set. We're going to group by the zip code and the shift, and then select the count of the personal schedule ID, which is going to be the supply count. And I'm going to go ahead and save this as a new view. I'm going to do that in the background just, because it's going to require a little bit of data processing, but I'll come back when that is done. Okay, so we have this saved as a new view. And it's just this pivot table again of pivoting on zip and the supply or in the shift, and then we're getting the total number of schedules available, or this would in this case be how many nurses want to work that shift, right? Okay, so now we're going to bring in the org schedules again, and here we'll do an inner join on org schedules. And because we have this demand analysis view, we can join directly onto the compiled version of that view, if that makes sense. So uh, here we're going to just join where the zip codes match. And again, this is recommended because it seems like it's a uh, similar column title. And then we're also going to join where the shifts are equal. And so we can do, join on this and this, or we can do a join on this or this. We're going to do an and in this case, and then we're going to bring in the demand count, which is going to be, that's going to be okay. Awesome. So now we have a supply count and a demand count for each zip code and shift. And we're going to do one more thing. We're going to add a smart column, which is effectively a formula. You can write raw SQL in here. We're going to name this the supply to demand ratio. And how we're going to do this is if you type call and open up the parentheses, you'll get a suggestion box of which columns you can select. And then we're going to do the supply count divided by the demand count. And then save that as a number. Awesome. So we have the supply demand ratio. And here we can use this to pivot on the zip and shift again. But now we're going to get the average supply and demand ratio. Awesome. And so now if we just want to do any sort of sorting on this, we'll look at which zip codes have the highest supply to demand ratio. So, the most supply relative to the demand. As you can imagine, we can go pretty far with this. We could start joining on other, data sets with zip codes, so we can bring in, number of providers in each of those zip codes, or more, enrichment data about like what city and state it is, just for the sake of that view. We can then go and visualize it as well, but we're going to save that one for another video.